welcome back to my channel. As always, I'm Sports Nerd. Today, we're going to be looking at this year's possible MVPs for the NBA season, at least in my opinion. Let's take it straight to the action. Just a disclaimer for this video, there are going to be two parts, and this video is going to be talking about possible MVPs for every single team in the Eastern Conference. Tune into part 2 where we talk about them for the Western Conference. For the Raptors, I picked Spicy P, Pascal Siakam. Here's why I picked him over Kyle Lowry. In just 60 games, he averaged a bit over 35 minutes and averaged about 20 points a game. And here's the thing. He could shoot the ball wherever he wanted to. He's one of the best three-point shooting centers in the league, averaging about 36% from behind the line, which is just incredible. And that's why I picked him over Kyle Lowry, because Kyle Lowry can't make decisions on when to shoot and when to pass. Pascal Siakam can. But, I mean, you could say Pascal Siakam is worse because he's a center. But I'd say he isn't much worse than Kyle Lowry, even if he is a center and Kyle Lowry's point guard, and he has more jobs. Like, he's a center, he's going to guard some of the tallest guys in the world. I mean, I don't know how center's any easier than point guard. Boston Celtics, it was a pretty hard decision, but I ended up going with the young Jason Tatum. The reason I did this is because go look at him in Basketball Reference. He averages just about as many minutes as Pascal Siakam, averages more points in just 6 more games. It's in about 16 games where he'd be hurt, he'd still come back and do good. He's one of those franchise players that's young and he's good. It's like late 80s MJ, early 80s Larry Bird. See all those known Hall of Famers, and he's staying with them, I'd say. That's why I think Jason Tatum's really good, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him in a finals sometime soon. For the Sixers, you could guess what it came down to. Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. You know, and I'm just going to put it out there. I think Joel Embiid is better, and here's why. Ben Simmons is just starting to shoot the ball. He can't shoot that well yet. But Joel Embiid can. He can shoot. I mean, I don't care if his career three-point percentage is like 25%, 30%. Guess what Ben Simmons is? Lower. He's made like 1 3 his entire career. You guys are thinking he's better? Maybe because he can drive to the rim. So is Embiid. He's literally gotten into more fights than Simmons. He's won more fights than Simmons, 1-0. But, I mean, it doesn't really matter because he can shoot the ball. Simmons cannot. He can drive under the hoop, but so can Simmons. But Embiid is positioned under the hoop, so it easily makes sense that he should be better under the hoop. So that just makes Embiid a better overall player. But it was a very difficult decision. The Nets, of course you can imagine it was another really, really, really hard one between Durant and Irving. 2 players that got injured through the season and had to recover during the sickness, the lockdown thing, or whatever that might be caused by, and came back if they could to be in the playoffs, but they really didn't come back. They couldn't. They didn't make it. And that's what happened with them. And so that just makes it an even harder decision. But who I pick is Kyrie Irving. For one reason. Their stats are basically equal for what positions they play. But one thing that stands out to Kyrie Irving through Kevin Durant is he always tried harder in the clutch. Durant looked kind of burned out in those clutch moments, and Irving kept on trying. Like, you can see his highlights on the Nets, and a lot of them are clutch moments. For the Knicks, it might sound harder than it really is, But it ended up being a quick three-way tie between the used-to-be rookie R.J. Barrett, the two-year veteran Kevin Knox, and the veteran Bobby Portis. Who I ended up picking is Kevin Knox because R.J. Barrett, he's only played one full season. In his defense, Kevin Knox only played two. In Bobby Portis' defense, he's getting older. I mean, he's still a bit young, but he's getting older. He's not producing as much. And so what's happening is that Knox, despite being the best player on the Knicks, ain't putting up the best career numbers. But that's because he's on the Knicks. The Knicks just haven't believed in him. They've only believed in the guys who really produced in college, which is R.J. Barrett. They put him in. He had good stats. But again, it's too early to tell. And Bobby Portis is just getting old, so they're not giving their good players any playing time, and they're giving their bad players all the playing time. And that's why the Knicks are doing bad. So if they give their good players playing time, maybe they'll win more games. For the Bucks, I'm just going to try to make this session long. I think we already all know the answer. Their starting lineup has been good for a long time. Their bench is good. But under the hoop, you'll see one scary figure by the name of Giannis Antetokounmpo. Say no more. I think you already learned. For the Pacers, for now, I'm going to say Victor Oladipo. He's getting hurt more than you want. And guys like TJ Warren are kind of climbing up on him to take that number one spot on the Pacers. Especially after you saw Victor Oladipo with that never-seen-before injury. And TJ Warren dropped like 60-some-odd points in a single game. The first game back from that sickness that everyone hated. And that number one spot for the Pacers is kind of becoming sort of a long shot for Oladipo and not that big anymore for Warren. I mean, for now it's going to be Oladipo, but 2 years later, you might ask me the same question. I might say Warren. You never know. For the Bulls, there's a YouTuber that I got to really make a good decision for. KLT4Q. Oh, sorry, I got a bad cough. Anyway, I think it's a hard race most of the way, but it's going to be Zach LaVine that's going to win it. And before any of you start screaming at me, maybe Lauri Markkanen or some of those guys, Wendell Carter is growing. I think LaVine, just because of his little experience, at least more experience than the other guys on this list, it's just going to be better for the Bulls, going to give them the best chance, especially with his dunking skills. Oh man, watch those. Those are awesome. So, I mean, that's why. And he can also shoot the ball, of course. I mean, he doesn't shoot it often. He often finds himself in breakaways or passing the ball. But he can shoot from mid-range, and he can shoot from threes. That's why he's pretty good for the Bulls. For the Pistons, all their good players are fan favorites. Some of the fan favorites we're going to be looking at kind of like Derrick Rose or Blake Griffin, Thon Maker. And I think their best player, best chance for their MVP, is Derrick Rose. Because other than Blake Griffin and Thon Maker, he's also a big guy, but he's a point guard that can drive under the rim like none other. But I mean, like, he's been slowed down from that ever since he tore his ACL like 10 years ago almost now. But still, he can drive under the hoop and he can shoot. Something that Blake Griffin and Thon Maker can't do to save their lives. Shoot the ball. Like, look at their percentages. They suck at shooting the ball if it's not a layup. But Rose can shoot it from anywhere. And he's not that mad whenever he goes like those other players. But he's also not super happy what happens. So, I mean, he's kind of not the greatest teammate, but he's good at playing the sport. That's why he's got the best chance at MVP award. The Cavs actually don't have the worst roster of all time. I'd say they have a pretty good roster, but they're just one of those teams that can't put it together. No fans can figure out why. They just can't put it together. I think their best player on the team is Larry Nance. Why I say this is because, like his father, he's not the greatest guy ever, but he's kind of like Kyle Korver. He's that Cavalier that's sometimes on the bench, sometimes he'll start, he kind of fluctuates, but when he is on the playing court, he can shoot the ball, he can put it in the rim, he can pass it, he can rebound it. He's like that perfect height for basketball. He's another one of those guys that can't put it together, and if he's on pretty much any other team, he's not going to be the best player, but he's on the Cavs, which is a bad team. So that's why he's the best player, because he's a good player on a bad team. Good job, Larry Nance. We are the Eastern Conference team representing the NBA Finals. Why I think that's the reason is because, they were the 5-seeded team. They had to beat a team that was better than them. At least had a better record. I don't know how much better than them they are. They had to beat the Pacers. And, Pacers don't have the worst talent. But what happens with the Heat is that they have a bunch of good, young, talented players, and they put it together to get to the finals, and they're giving the Lakers a run for their money, a run for their championship. They're giving it all of it. I think their best player to make all that happen is Bam Adebayo. I think a lot of people would agree with me with that, because he can shoot the ball anywhere. He's a lot like Spicy P, the first best player we have on this list. In fact, he can shoot the ball. He can get under the rim. He's a valuable player, a really good player. And there's not many bad things people can say about him. And there's a lot of other people on that team as well that are good, but I think Bam Adebayo comes out at number 1. For the Magic, it was another very tough one. Lots of talent on this roster. Watch out for the Magic next year. Got guys like Aaron Gordon, Markelle Fultz, Nikola Vucevic, and lots more than that. All these guys can dunk, all these guys can shoot really well, but I think in number 1, at least for now, it's going to be Markelle Fultz. I know not a lot of people would agree with me with that. I know a lot of people would say Nikola Vucevic, a lot of people would say Aaron Gordon, but I think it's Markelle Fultz because he can actually shoot the ball. He's not like Aaron Gordon that's just dreaming to go to the three-point contest. He actually deserves to be in there. He can shoot it. He can go down to the hoop. Not as stylish as Aaron Gordon, of course, but he can go down to the hoop, which is incredible. Just watch his game. It's good. Other than Vucevic can't really shoot that well from 3. Vucevic only goes under the hoop, and he's starting to get hurt too much. Fultz can shoot. Fultz doesn't get hurt. Fultz can dunk. Fultz can do everything that the other 2 guys can do. That's why he's the best player on the Magic. The Hornets, they got a good few players on their team, like Teddy Rozier, Devonta Graham, Malik Monk. They don't have much good talent after that. I think the Hornets' best player is probably going to come down to either Malik Monk or Devonta Graham, which is a high-speed race. Devonta Graham is younger, but Malik Monk is putting up better stats. And I think he's more of a fan favorite, so who do you pick in this situation? I picked Devonta Graham just because he's younger, so he's got more potential, and he's pretty much staying in the same stat race as guys like his big opponent, Malik Monk. And that's why he's still the best player on the Hornets, because like Larry Nance, he's a good player on a bad team. For the Wizards, I don't care how many exceptions you try to make. It's obvious who it's going to come down to. It's either going to be A, Bradley Beal, or B, John Wall. And I think in this case, it's going to be John Wall. Because John Wall is playing at just as good level as Bradley Beal, and he has well more experience and probably actually a bit more talent as well. But I just think that John Wall's a bit better because, I mean, he has pretty much the same stats. He's putting up pretty much the same exact thing. He even looks the same as John Wall and Bradley Beal. They look the same. But the one thing that differs them, John Wall has experience. I mean, I guess Bradley Beal does have experience as well. Not as much, though. The Hawks are a lot like the Wizards. No matter how many arguments you try to make, every single person is going to come down to one of two players. Is it going to be Trae Young or is it going to be Clint Capella? That's the players that you're going to come down to. There's a lot of teams like that that's just going to come down to two players. In this case, I think the better player is actually, argue with me all you want, Clint Capella. I say this because even though Trae Young can shoot the ball like Steph Curry, Clint Capella can get under the hoop and take way less riskier shots. Trae Young, I mean, he's learning a little bit, but still, he'll carelessly put up a 30-foot shot. No, that's obviously going to miss. And he'll only make it some part of the time, while Clint Capella gets right under the hoop every time and will make it. I mean, or put it like in a jump shot and make it still half the time. That's why I think Clint Capella's less risky. He's smarter. I mean, he's smarter. He's less risky, so he's better, I think. Tomorrow, I might be posting a part 2 of this. I might be posting hockey. But until then, guys, I'm Sports Nerd, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!